Joining us now to break this down is Dr. Sinan Ciddi, Senior Fellow on Turkey at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy. So, first of all, just how seriously should we take Turkey's claim that it's fully prepared to deploy forces, and what is Ankara really trying to achieve here?
I mean, Turkey is serious that it wants to deploy troops into Gaza, and it says it's ready to go now, that it has about 2,000 troops to go. And it has been willing to do that for some time. But what's really behind it? What's really behind it is essentially Erdogan's ploy to essentially put Turkish troops in there, to essentially use that both for domestic purposes on his hand, to basically say he's supporting the Palestinians on the ground in Gaza, but more to the worry of Israel, as well as a handful of other Arab states, not least of all the Egyptians, the Emiratis, as well as the Saudis, and also, I should add, not insignificant parts of the US government and the US administration, that it's really there to essentially support Hamas and basically be an armed support group, a major armed military support of Hamas inside of Gaza.
Given Erdogan's past ties to Hamas, how do you think Turkish boots on the ground would be perceived in the region as a whole? And talk to us about, why Israel's drawing such a hard red line, why Israel is so deeply concerned about this.
Look, I mean, this would just be the worst outcome, simply because if a Turkey's military was to move 2,000 men into Gaza that are armed and basically provisioned, that would essentially mean that Hamas now has a permanent military sort of support group inside of it, and not least of all from a NATO military. And that would allow Erdogan to essentially mobilize military support at Hamas's insistence and need anytime that it would, call upon it. But that's not the only thing that, Israel and the Arab states, as well as parts of the US administration, are worried about. Look, Turkey also has, I put in air quotes, relief organizations inside of Gaza right now, such as the Humanitarian Relief Foundation that it has called IHH, and other organizations that it wants to move in there like Tika. All of these organizations that Turkey has, that it calls aid organizations, are compromised fronts, which are basically on the record and have been compromised by their associations to Hamas and other jihadist entities. Israel has revealed time and time again that IHH and Tika have been providing vital support to terrorist organizations and terrorist plots. We've just seen that the Shin Bet in Israel revealed a major finance operation where Turkey was helping funnel Iranian monies to Gaza's operating accounts. So, the Turkish military in Gaza would just be the cherry on top of all of this.
Yesterday we covered how the U.S. is in discussions right now with Turkey, more specifically regarding Ankara's rejoining of the F-35 fighter jet program. Of course, what message should this send to Israel in terms of its own relationship with the United States and how much the United States values Israel, or deems it important that Israel remains you could say, the strongest in the region?
Look, the United States has historically a commitment to providing and maintaining a qualitative military edge with its provision of F-35s to Israel, but not only to Israel, but it's also when it agreed to sell F-16s to Turkey in January 2024, it gave assurances to other F-35 operators in the region, such as Greece, saying that they would increase F-35 sales to Greece. I think right now, all these talk of, re-upping or re-bringing Turkey into the F-35 program, I think it's somewhat overblown. I think this is largely the conversations of Tom Barak, the U.S. ambassador to Turkey, trying to sort of nudge this conversation along. I don't suspect that this is actually going to go anywhere. But again, obviously tensions are high in the air simply because there are still strong congressional sanctions in place and congressional impediments which prevents Turkey getting the F-35.
Right.
And I think Tom Barak is actually stating things that he intends to happen, which are not necessarily going to pan out in reality. But he should not be saying those things right now.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Ciddi.